It's Friday, the 5th of July, 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Let's go. There's some big ones today. Story number 1, Santos' share price jumped 4% yesterday after reports that 2 separate companies, Saudi Aramco and Abu Dhabi National Oil Co., are considering bidding for the oil and gas giant.
The state-owned companies have been conducting preliminary evaluations of Santos as a possible acquisition target, according to Bloomberg. Now, Santos came out and said it doesn't comment on market speculation. While the news surprised some analysts, and any deal would have many regulatory hurdles to get through, the reports show that there's plenty of movement in the oil and gas world. The big prize is the LNG projects in Australia, PNG and Timor-Leste. Santos also has oil assets in Alaska. For much of last year, Santos and Woodside held merger talks, which would have created an $80 billion company. The talks ended in February this year. After they ended, CEO Kevin Gallagher talked about the strategy he had, carbon capture and storage projects in South Australia, the massive Barossa gas project in the Timor Sea, and a $15 billion PNG venture.
So, Sean, even if this doesn't go ahead, Santos is pretty much in play, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. Gas is increasingly in demand as the best transition fuel as the world ultimately moves to renewables. Gulf countries are investing billions of dollars in gas, and Qatar plans to nearly double LNG export capacity. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are pumping cash into domestic fields and building trading operations globally. Santos basically could fit into all of that. Apart from the Woodside-Santos merger, EIG, a US-based private equity group, made a $14.4 billion bid for Santos back in 2018. So the bidding's been going on for a while, and I think it's going to start escalating.
All right, on to story number 2 now, Sean. Finally, some relief for tenants, with rents now falling, stable or rising much less quickly across most capital cities.
Domain's June quarter rent report shows the weakest quarterly growth for house rents since 2021 in Sydney and Melbourne, and since 2020 in Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth. It's a similar story for units. Vacancy rates are also rising, suggesting conditions are starting to improve for renters. Interesting to look at the growth in rents over the last year. Perth and Melbourne led the way with growth of 12%, even though house price growth in the Victorian capital has been very weak. Apartment rents haven't risen as much in Melbourne, though at 10%, they're still well above Sydney. Domain Chief of Research Nicola Powell said going forward, more rental availability, slightly less demand following the peak of immigration last year, and the likelihood of a jump in first home owners should keep taking pressure off the market.
Story number 3, total sales of vehicles hit a record for the first 6 months of the year, though the pace of growth may have peaked because June numbers are well below last year.
Australian customers took delivery of just under 120,000 new vehicles last month, taking sales for the 6 months to more than 632,000. That's about 9% higher than a year earlier for that 6 months. Also a record. Now, the previous record was 606,000 back in 2018. But for the month of June, sales are actually down 4% compared to a year earlier. Being the end of the financial year, June really matters. While SUVs and light commercial vehicles dominate the market, there has been a jump in hybrid vehicles sold. Hybrids captured 14.4% of the market last month compared to 7.8% a year earlier. Toyota again led the way from Ford, Mazda, Kia and Mitsubishi. Ford Ranger, top-selling vehicle, followed by Toyota Hilux, RAV4, Toyota vehicle, that one, the Mitsubishi Outlander, and then the Tesla Model Y.
Story number 4, Britain went to the polls overnight, Sean, with only one result possible, really, a landslide win to the Labour Party.
We won't quite know how big the landslide is for a few days, but it is likely to be the largest majority for a Labor government ever in the UK, meaning that Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party faces the worst defeat in history. The polls are open from 7am to 10pm, meaning Australian Eastern Time. They closed at 7am this morning. Voting isn't compulsory. Last election, about 2/3 of the population voted. The new Prime Minister will be Keir Starmer, a barrister who was Director of Public Prosecutions before joining Parliament in 2015. One of his most famous jobs was serving as a human rights advisor to the Northern Ireland Policing Board. Good luck to him.
Last one, Sean. Story number 5. The pressure on Joe Biden to drop out of the race is growing as 2 credible opinion polls show Donald Trump well ahead in the battle to become president.
The New York Times is reporting that Mr. Biden conceded the possibility of him dropping out to a friend, though the White House denied the report. There are also stories of dozens of Democrat politicians considering signing a letter demanding he withdraw from the election. Meanwhile, a New York Times poll found Mr. Trump ahead 49% to 43%. Wall Street Journal poll about the same. Largest lead for Mr. Trump thus far. The survey suggests that worries over Biden's age are driving this shift. In fact, nearly 3/4 of voters in the Time poll said the 81-year-old president is too old for the job.
Okay, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Friday, the 5th of July, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.